Hey everyone, and welcome to The Year Was, the podcast all about today that gives you just enough information to effectively be that guy at the party, causing all your friends to question, hey, who invited you? Like, seriously, why are you here? I'm your host, Michael Montalvan. For the next few minutes, we will open history's door and find out what makes today truly unique. On this episode, we examine the events that occurred December 4th. Jiminy Cricket. Or is it Gemini Cricket? What's really funny is that on the script it's spelt the same way twice. It all just changes in the pronunciation. But if you didn't guess, we're going to be talking about a Gemini today. Now, Geminis are ruled by Mercury, and they are most compatible with Sagittarius and Aquarius, and their element is air. But really, Gemini 7 started life in an odd way. It actually came before Gemini 6, but why was that? Gemini 6 was originally scheduled to launch in October of 1965 and was going to include docking maneuvers with the Agena target vehicle, which was an uncrewed spacecraft that was used to practice orbital space rendezvous and docking. So on October 25th, Gemini 6 prepared for launch. However, the launch of the Agena target vehicle fired its primary engine, and a catastrophic failure caused the vehicle to explode. So Gemini 6 was canceled shortly after that. But we still wanted to go into space, and we wanted to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things. And in order to do that, we had to prove that we could dock in space, or at least rendezvous. And that's where Gemini 7 comes in. It was decided that 2 weeks after the launch of Gemini 7, a second Gemini 6 mission, now dubbed 6A, would launch with a 26-hour mission with the purpose of rendezvousing with Gemini 7. And so because of this, you can't really talk about Gemini 7 without talking about Gemini 6. I'm going to be saying Gemini a lot today. Now, this was not the only objective of 7. Commanded by Frank Borman and piloted by James A. Lovell Jr., they were also tasked with demonstrating manned orbital for 14 days and then evaluating the physiological effects of a long-duration spaceflight on the crew. Added to this was docking with 6A, conducting 20 experiments using lightweight pressure suits along with demonstrating technology and techniques needed to perform extravehicular activities, or EVAs, as well as evaluating the spacecraft re-entry guidance capability. So here we go. The year was 1965, and on this day, December 4th, Gemini 7 had a successful launch and began its mission in space. And overall, everything went well, with a few exceptions. Of the 20 experiments that they were tasked to complete, all but 2 were accomplished, and those only because of equipment failure. There was also some psychological toll. Borman noted, Gemini are beginning to notice the days seem to be lengthening a bit. The cabin was cramped, the temperature was high, and the toilet and cleaning was inadequate. Borman would also go on to add that we were getting a little crummy up here. Reports indicate that Borman was perhaps the most affected as his sleep pattern changed drastically from around 6 hours to only about 4. Now let's go back to Gemini 6 for a minute. Having now been set for a December 12th launch, they again faced trouble and the mission was again aborted. They quickly realized that another attempt could be made and a day could be shaved off their 4-day turnaround. On December 15th, 1965, Gemini 6 would finally make its launch with Wally Schirra as commander and pilot Thomas B. Stafford. At 8:37 a.m., the first stage engines ignited and Schirra was heard to exclaim, "Go! Do you hear the man? Go!" After 5 minutes 41 seconds, 6A was finally in orbit, and a few minutes after, Borman and Lovell on 7 could see the contrail and even briefly saw the spacecraft as it passed over Africa. With the successful launch of 6A, NASA now had its first 2 spacecraft crewed mission. So now the mission was to test rendezvous and docking techniques. 6A was in a lower orbit and was able to catch 7 very quickly. At 5 hours, 4 minutes, Schirra spotted 7 And 12 minutes after, Schirra began the final series of maneuvers to bring the two spacecraft together. After a series of braking maneuvers, Gemini 6 stopped 40 meters from Gemini 7 and completed the first spacecraft rendezvous at 2:33 p.m. During the next 3 orbits, they drifted as far as 90 meters and as close as 0.3 meters. They did not actually perform a docking procedure. That would be saved for Gemini 8. But with the end of the day, the crews had a meal, and Gemini 7 reported, "We have company tonight." Gemini 7 would stay in orbit another 3 days, and the departure of 6A was a letdown for Borman and Lovell as they dealt with fuel cell issues and minor malfunctions, as well as each other. In a turn of good fortune, however, it was decided that the astronauts would be more comfortable without their G5C spacesuits, and were both allowed to remove them until their return home from orbit. On December 17th, Gemini 7 was given the final go to complete their 14-day mission, and they finally returned home on December 18th. It was actually just 5.5 hours short of 14 days, but it set a record that would last until 1970 as the space endurance record. And that's going to do it for us today. If you like this podcast and want to hear more, give us a rate and a review. That helps me out and helps me steer this in a direction that hopefully is good for all. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can find the audio version on your podcast app of choice, link in the description. And you can find me on social media and at YouTube at the Apple Cider Club. As always, I want to thank the Tim Kreitz Band for our musical theme and to thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.